back to the NoScore Review Show, where we have in-depth critique and nuanced discussion of some of the latest movies, video games, and television. I am your host, Nick Green, and today we are not just doing one movie, television show, or video game, but instead we are doing our 2023 in review. We're going to be going over our favorite picks of the year. We all actually picked films, but we might get to some honorable mentions that include some notable TV shows and video games. Joining me today are Matt Schmidt, Michael Bentley, and Shay Martin. Thank you all for being here today. We had a brief discussion about this before. I don't think this is the first time I've had three guests on, but my memory's a little foggy anyway. So today I have three people on. And I also will be including some pre-recorded segments from all of the other guests I've had on throughout the year. There will be a couple picks throughout those that do include non-film related highlights of the year. So be looking forward to that.
I'm excited to find out who those people are.
Exactly. Before we get into each of our specific picks, we'll just kind of do a round robin of our impressions of the year, maybe some quick highlights and lowlights overall. And So let's start with Michael. How did you feel about 2023 overall?
I think in terms of entertainment, it was decently solid. There were a fair number of big hitters that came out this year. Some of them didn't hit as big as people would have hoped, especially near the tail end of the year.
Right.
And I'm not just quietly picking on Marvel there. There's some Starfield was a fair bit of a low light. That one didn't really knock much out of the park. Okay. But I think overall, in terms of a year, it was a pretty consistent like deluge of this month there's this thing and this month there's that thing. But I've heard of it, Barbenheimer, the thing that everyone will be trying to unnaturally recreate for the next 10 years of your life.
Can't wait.
My favorite was when the Paw Patrol movie and Saw X came out at the same time, and people were trying to get Saw Patrol trending. That was close. But no, I like you think back, like, oh yeah, Saw X came out. There's a Saw movie. There's a new this movie. There's a new that video game. It was a pretty big and expansive year, but I would say that overall, it is weird that one has to actually kind of sit down and think, okay, what did come out this year and really stood out to me. So I think it was a strong year, but it didn't really have a year that like made it that thing beyond what I will discuss later. But beyond the one film, I don't think there's anything that really made the year for me.
Mm-hmm. And would you say you picked, or not picked, but would you say the film was predominantly a highlight in like one category in terms of like films, video games, TV for you personally?
It was a highlight just in general. It wasn't just like the big film for it. It was like, oh, this is like a really great piece of entertainment, but I won't talk about it now, Nick. I can't do that later.
Okay, we'll get to it. Shay, how about you? How was 2023 for you in entertainment?
Not the best, but not terrible either. I do kind of
middle of the road.
Yeah, I mean, it does come down to like at the end of the day, what tickets you buy at the box office. This year, I didn't attend as many film festivals as I would have liked. I more so attended like the big blockbusters. So I can only really speak to that. It was an exciting year as for, I would say, the general public getting kind of back into, Barbenheimer was a huge internet sensation for people like us, but also a lot of people who don't follow film at all. So it was exciting, especially post-pandemic, to see such a huge amount of people attending the theaters again. Totally. I was going through my stubs on my Cineplex account, and I did go to a lot more like blockbustery type films this year. So Marvel wise, it was okay year. I think Guardians of the Galaxy was this year. This year also has felt so long. I'm looking at my Letterboxd right now.
I agree.
And I'm like, Guardians of the Galaxy felt like it was already 2 years ago. Or Cocaine Bear.
Oh, right. That was a thing. Forgot about that.
That came out in February.
It's the last 3 years hasn't been like a huge thing for me. But I guess to say very quickly that it had a lot of guilty pleasures. Like Indiana Jones 5 was not the best, but not terrible either. Even the Little Mermaid remake, I will still claim. I never thought I would liked it so much, but it was a great freaking film. And, just like Saw X, like you already mentioned, was also surprisingly very good and one of the best in the franchise. So, yeah.
It's cool to hear that we kind of share the same sentiment, even having consumed varying levels of entertainment as well. Because, like you say, you went predominantly to most of the blockbusters this year, but it still feels like Ant-Man and Cocaine Bear feel like multiple years ago now, which like I completely agree with. There's so many things. John Wick Chapter 4 came out earlier this year, and it feels like forever ago already.
Everything before summer was last year.
Exactly. Yeah, Barbenheimer, I think, kind of really like drew a line in the sand.
That was New Year's.
Just forget everything. Yeah.
Barbenheimer was the start of the year, and then everything before that just gets lost.
Yeah. I'm looking at my Letterboxd, and the very first movie I watched this year was You People. Not a good start to the year.
I wonder what the first movie I watched was.
Was that the Netflix one with Eddie Murphy?
Yeah. Yes, and Jonah Hill.
Oh, God. Yeah, right.
Oh, that's the one that has that horrible CGI kiss in it, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the COVID kiss.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Not the year for Jonah Hill.
No,
definitely not.
No, can't imagine that it was. Matt, how about you? How was your 2023?
Mine was good. I'm just checking my Letterboxd stats right now because I'm curious what the first movie I watched this year was, and then I will continue with the rest of my spiel.
Well, it would be
just because it's going to bother. It was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, the one where they go to Japan.
It's good that you start on such a high note.
It surely was. It set the tone for the rest of the year. My general, I thought it was a pretty decent year overall. I feel like for me, there wasn't necessarily as many like knockouts as there might be. I think I gave out 3 5s this year out of all of the movies, and I think I saw like 70 or something new films. That might be a little more. It might be like closer to 50 or something, but I feel like usually I find more throughout a year that'll really click with me. But that being said, I also think on average most of the movies that I watched were in the like 3.5 above range. I didn't see very many films that disappointed me as much as I do previous years. That might also just be because I'm going to the theater a little bit less and being a little bit more picky about what I spend my money on. But
which is probably the wise choice.
Which is probably the wise choice because there's just too much out there, I think. And you know, my watch list on Letterboxd is like 1,500 movies. So you know, why bother going to see movies that you think you might not like? And instead go see
like especially spend the money on too, right? Like you can always check it out later.
But I think VIFF was really strong this year. Like we had the earlier earlier episode doing a roundup of that. I think it was one of the best years of the festival that I've been to so far, and that was like 20 something movies in that week alone that were really good. So overall, I'd say it was a good year for more independent film. It seems like the blockbusters hurt a little bit more, particularly Disney,
Disney's had a rough year.
which I am all here for. Suffer more, Disney, please.
Yeah.
But yeah, who knows? Maybe they can change it around.
Yeah.
See, we got a lot of really good sort of new IPs, or not necessarily franchise related stuff this year, which was kind of good.
Yeah. Like my top
Yeah.
like 15 movies, there's like a couple that are pre-established franchises or like studios, like Studio Ghibli type things. But like, I mean, VIF alone took a lot of the top spots for me in my list for this year.
Same.
So it was a very strong year for smaller films, independent films,
Yeah.
and all the like big blockbusters that like I hold near and dear from this year are like new entries in like a franchise, or like newer franchises that have come around, like with the Spider-Verse films from the last few years. Um, and quite a few foreign films as well that I saw this year were like top contenders. So yeah, I would say it was a what the ones that truly hit hard. I think of the, what's my list at, of the 73 I've seen this year, I would say probably like 40 of them are kind of the biggest chunk of like middle of the road. Like towards the above average stuff is like there's some good stuff to it and I might rewatch it again, and then towards the bottom half.
Careful. You almost gave that a review. You almost gave a review.
Well, Matt's already been thrown out 3 stars and 5 stars. So
you ruined it. It's become the score review
yeah.
show.
Yeah, it's like the biggest chunk in the middle is like very varying degrees of like, yeah, it was okay, or like just completely forgettable. There weren't that many this year for me that were like true disappointments, or like actively hated those movies that they were that bad. So yeah, I would agree. A pretty solid year overall. It's definitely one of the years, if not the year, that I've seen the most movies, and obviously because of this whole channel thing has motivated me a little bit more. Got to go to my first VIF this year, which was also great. And yeah, I would definitely say films that were the strongest point for me as well. I didn't consume as many like video games or TV shows. I think predominantly, or like most of the TV shows I did watch this year were like Disney Plus shows, and most of those weren't that great. So I think it was a pretty weak year for television on my end, though it's pretty skewed in terms of the like pie chart of what I watched where. Mostly being like Lucasfilm and Marvel stuff. So, and again, Disney's been having a really rough year. So, yeah. But I think that's kind of where we'll leave that for our general thoughts on the year overall. We're going to start getting into our specific picks, our favorites of the year. And I think before we do that, we are going to throw, or before we do it with the guests I have here, we'll throw to our first pre-recorded segment. So future Nick, please take it away, or past Nick. I don't know how this works. Time is weird. Go ahead, future me. Thank you for that lovely introduction, past Nick. Joining me today for this segment of the Year in Review is Allison Broder, host of the Who's There podcast, a show for horror fans. Welcome back, Allison.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be back here talking about movies at the end of the year.
And I am excited to have you back. It was a pretty good year for horror movies overall, I would say. I think more of them hit than missed for me, at least the ones I saw anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, in case anyone was surprised, Allison's pick will be a horror movie for this year. Allison, what's the movie you wanted to talk about today?
I wanted to talk about Saw X.
Perfect. Yeah, we never got a chance to chat about this. I didn't get to have you on the show for this one. That's more my fault than anything, but I'm excited to chat about it with you. So what were your kind of thoughts overall? We'll kind of steer clear of like general spoilers, I would say.
Mhm.
But yeah, what are your thoughts on Saw X?
So I thought it was a really great 10th installment of
Mm-hmm.
franchise. Um, I thought they came at it from a really unique approach where they actually got you to uh, empathize with John Kramer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the traps were really gross. There were some twists and turns. You actually got to see like more of John Kramer, and he's great. Who is the actor?
Oh, Tobin Bell?
Tobin
Is that
Bell.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he was great. Um, and I really didn't think that I was gonna like this one as much as I did because I Saw in theaters in 2004, and it scarred me. And I another one until Spiral came out, and that was the
Oh,
first movie that I
really?
saw back in theaters after when they reopened.
Right.
So I was like, okay, well, I've seen the first and the last, and now there's one more coming out, and so I should probably watch the others.
Mm-hmm.
I had watched another YouTuber talk about all the traps once and rank them,
Okay.
so I knew what all the traps were, but I had just never watched the movies.
Yeah.
So I think in the span of maybe it was I don't know, a month, I watched 2 through 8. Um,
Wow.
and I
That's a
said on
lot
a
of torture.
yeah, yeah. Um, I had said on in an interview on my show, um, that I had recorded in August. I was like, you know, I don't know what I'm going to think of these. And the guest was like, I don't know if you're going to be more offended by the gore or the writing. And I was like, probably the gore. And I can tell you now, I was more offended by the writing. Because they kind of just get progressively worse
Yeah.
in terms of writing and like characters and stuff.
Yeah.
In I think it was Saw 6 with the insurance guy. I was like, yes, please kill them all.
Yeah.
You're doing the Lord's work, John Kramer. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
but then Saw X came out, went, I think opening night, I think my boyfriend and I went opening night.
Mm-hmm.
There was a guy sitting in like the front of the first section, and he had his jigsaw doll like on the ledge, and I was like,
Oh my
okay.
God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Everyone was like so excited to be there. They were like clapping and everything. And I did not see the trailer before I went to go see the movie. I
Oh,
don't know how
really?
I missed it. So the whole part of this isn't a spoiler because it's in the trailer,
Yeah. Yeah.
of the medical establishment that he's going to get this treatment
Mhm.
is like fraudulent. I didn't know that going in. So I was like, oh,
Interesting.
damn. And I would have been so pissed had I known that going in. So I'm sorry to everyone who's listening to this. Um, but yeah, I thought the acting was really good, and yeah, lots of twists and turns and how it ended, and yeah, I really enjoyed it, and maybe I enjoyed it so much because of my theater experience,
Yeah,
because it
for
was just
sure.
like so like high energy. But
Yeah.
yeah, when the end happened, like everyone was like cheering.
Ye-
So
Totally. Yeah,
yeah.
it's like horror movies can be like if you have a really good crowd, then that just absolutely enhances the experience. That was the case for me with Barbarian. Um,
Mm,
like that was just a bonkers ride.
yeah.
So it can definitely help. But I think overall, I think I probably went like maybe 3 weeks after it came out.
Mhm.
Um, so it was a pretty like small crowd in my theater. Um, so it definitely wasn't as animated or anything, but I enjoyed the film as well. I was just not expecting what actually I think got me going to see it in theaters was the word of mouth and the
Mhm.
like reviews around it.
Yeah.
Um, because like 10 movies into this franchise, it's like you know
Yeah.
what you're getting into. Like the writing is terrible, you're just there for like the torture porn and the creative kills of
Yeah.
it all. But yeah, the like focus on John Kramer was really well done. It's crazy to think about like not going into explicit detail, but like throughout the whole almost first half of the movie, probably, if you take like one scene out, it just plays like a straight like medical drama. And
Oh
it's
yeah.
just like, I almost kind of, part of me wished like that one scene was omitted, just and they just like stuck to their guns the whole way, and then it like flips a switch halfway through. That would have been hilarious. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was a really like compelling like story for John Kramer. Tobin Bell, bringing Tobin Bell back was a like amazing decision. I think a couple of the like, it gets a little too twisty and turny for me towards the end, and plays up that melodrama a little bit.
Mhm.
And I don't know that it ends on a super satisfactory note for me. Like the worst person. Well, I mean, I won't get into any details, but like I think it could have, or it should have maybe ended a little more satisfactory with just the outcomes of all the characters. I'll leave it at that. Um, yeah, but maybe that's just more my personal taste. But yeah, the kills were really good in this. They were like a lot more raw, a lot more stripped back, and they also seemed to really embrace the like early to mid 2000s style of like editing and cutting and
Yeah.
like camera work and everything. It had that really grungy, dirty feel to it,
Yeah.
which I really appreciated as well.
Yeah.
Um,
And I have not verified this by, going back and watching. I was either Saw 6 or the final Saw. Which was
mhm.
the one with the insurance guys? Do you remember?
I honestly I don't, because
Let
I
me see.
also haven't seen Spiral or
Hmm.
what was the one before it? Jigsaw, I think.
Yes. Oh,
Whatever
I
the
don't
two
think I've
most
seen.
recent
Wait,
ones.
did I see that one? I don't know. I can't remember. They all
They
blend
all blend
together
together. Yeah.
when it's like, yeah, when I was trying to describe something to some of my friends, I was like, yeah, and then White Detective number 1, White Detective number
Yeah.
2, they're both interchangeable. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
yeah.
I cannot help you there, because I passed the first one. I haven't seen any of them for years.
Oh,
I
okay.
only rewatched the first one like in the last, like, I think it was over the pandemic actually.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it escapes me. The only other thing that like sticks in my memory is I think it's 3 that takes place in the house with the needle pit.
That's
Is that
2.
right? That's
That's
2.
2.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only one that sticks in my head. And then like the posters are seared into my brain as well, because those are
Yeah.
some pretty like memorable. Uh, they have very memorable marketing, I would say.
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, as far as characters and story goes, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah,
Um,
well, the one with the insurance guys, it starts off like you meet them first where they're turning this guy down
okay.
for like they're like if you go get this experimental treatment in Norway, we're
Mhm.
going to cut off your insurance. And I think the doctor in 10 is from Norway originally, and then
Oh,
they shut them down. So I think that may have been a tie-in. I haven't verified. I could
interesting.
be making this up in my head, but I swear, like there's a correlation there. I
Right.
don't know.
There was some
Um,
sort of connection to a past film. If that's true, that's
yeah,
awesome that they were able to weave that in as well.
yeah. Well, I when they were writing all the Saw movies, I listened to a podcast and they did a lot of research on it, and they were like, yeah, so they would retcon, they would go on this message board called like the Book of Saw or whatever,
Yeah.
and like see what inconsistencies fans picked out, and then find a way to like tie it in the next movie.
Whoa.
So they were always retconning.
Wow, that is dedication. My
Yeah,
goodness. Especially
yeah.
for those types of movies too. That's such a weird, like, I mean, good on them for the like kind of attention to detail and the dedication, but wow, wouldn't expect that. Because like at that point too, right, when you reach like 5, 6, 7 of these movies, they're, you would think they would just be like, yeah, write whatever can like uh whatever the like basis of like qualifying as a script is, then like just submit it in and you've made your money. So that's cool. But yeah, the script for this one was like really tight, really well done. The characters were great. Is it Amanda?
Yeah,
Is that her
Amanda.
name?
Yeah.
Amanda coming back was awesome as well. And it's
Yeah,
definitely probably my second favorite.
yeah.
It's pretty close, honestly, uh, in conjunction with the first movie, in terms of quality.
Yeah.
It's just like leagues above everything else in the franchise for me. So
Oh my god. Yeah, they get so bad with the writing, with the
yeah,
characters, with everything. Um and I heard that people were like mad that they weren't de-aging Tobin Bell or
oh
Shawnee Smith, and I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I didn't even care.
yeah,
It wasn't.
yeah. Really, at that point, no,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter, and they look fine. It wasn't really that much of a hindrance
Yeah.
on it, honestly.
Yeah.
Um,
And it saw 6. I was just looking it up on IMDb. It saw
okay,
6 that has the insurance executives. So if
okay,
anyone wants to go fact check me.
perfect. All right. Well, yeah, I guess that's all said and done. Saw X is Allison's pick for this year. Did you have an honorable mention you wanted to shout out, if only by title?
Yeah, I think Cobweb. It didn't last very long in
Cobweb?
theaters
Okay.
because it came out the same weekend as Barbenheimer.
It sure did, yeah.
But it's a Halloween horror movie and it's creepy
Hmm.
and it has Lizzie Kaplan, so go watch it.
Yeah.
It's on Hulu, I believe, at least in the US.
Okay. Yeah, that, like, if you want a movie that really leans into the Halloween aesthetic through the production design, like, that is a
Yeah.
perfect spooky season watch for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Allison, thank you so much for coming on to the 2023 year in review for the show. I'm very grateful that you were able to come on multiple times. And I very much look forward to having you on in the future. 2024 is looking to have some potential big hitters for horror movies. So I look forward to having you back on.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I really enjoyed coming on, and yeah, I look forward to 2024. I just sent out my first newsletter yesterday, and it was a recap of everything that I found that was coming out in 2024. So
Oh, great.
yeah, everyone should go sign up for my newsletter. It's in
Totally.
my Instagram bio. So yeah,
Okay. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I'll
yeah,
include all of the links and plugs for all the guests in the description down below. And if I can, at the end of the video as well. And I'll probably have like a little sub header that has been up during this whole little segment. So be sure to go follow Allison on all of her socials and go listen to the Who's There podcast. It is a fantastic show if you're a big horror fan. And yeah, thanks again, Allison. And we'll throw back to past Nick, future Nick, some variation of myself. And yeah,
all right. Thanks so much.
and thank you very much, past me, future me. I don't know. Um, Now we will get into our favorites of the year, and we'll go in the reverse order of how we started. So, Matt, let's start with you. What was your pick of 2023?
My pick is How to Blow Up a Pipeline. And it was the first movie that I saw. I almost gave it a rating there. That really jumped out at me. And I saw it at the pretty close to the beginning of the year. I don't remember exactly, but I think it was like, I don't know, March or something when it
Okay.
finally came out. Even though it's technically a movie from last year, it didn't get its theatrical run until early this year. But it's just this, this little sort of low budget A24 neon thriller about a bunch of eco terrorists. And it, as a movie, sure, it's like, it's pretty almost by the books, as a kind of like heist type movie. But boy, do I fucking align with the politics of this thing so hard. Like, the FBI gave warnings and urged people not to watch this movie because it was afraid that it was going to radicalize people. And they
What?
actively
Wow.
discouraged people from seeing this movie because they get it so fucking right in it. And
Oh,
the whole idea sort of, it explains the methodology why, like, I'm sure you guys remember when there were all of those people that were going and like gluing themselves to the roads
Oh yeah,
and
all too
people that are
well.
going around slashing tires of big SUVs and stuff like that. And it sort of puts that in perspective of why they're doing it. And it, in my head now, it makes a lot more sense why they're doing that stuff. Because before, I always thought like, oh, you're just like, you're not going to get people on your side by doing this, because you're
Yeah,
just going to be annoying the people
it's
that
just a
you're
temporary
trying to
inconvenience.
rally. And like, oh, that doesn't really make sense to me. But after watching the movie, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, it makes sense. And while like I maybe, don't agree with everything that happens in the movie, for FBI, if you're listening to this, I'm not, do not watch me. I'm not a danger to you. But I think this movie just does so much right with how it handles the unity within class, because it sort of bypasses all of this sort of like sexism, racism, uh kind of inequality, and all of the tension that comes between man versus woman, and the different races and different sexualities and everything. And you have all of these characters that are completely different. Like, you've got this religious Texas dude, you've got an indigenous man from North Dakota, you've got like a Mexican lesbian, you've got like a
Very
gay
culturally
person,
diverse.
whatever. Like, they're all over the place, that normally you would think like, oh, these people have completely different views, and they're these are people from different demographics that usually in the media would be at odds
Butting
with each
heads.
other,
Yeah, yeah.
or they would be, their differences would be at the forefront. But in the film, they're all united under the idea that the real enemy is not each other. The enemy is the rich. It's the elites and the
Right.
corporations. And all of these people have these backstories that makes them come together and makes it make sense. And it's not this like shoehorned diversity that's just trying to get token characters in for the sake of it. Like, every single character is really unique and fleshed out, and it makes sense. And I think that's really something that we should be seeing more often in films, because too often the conflict is going to be within these social groups and within these identities. And I think a lot of that is just stoking the fire in that sort of
That
I don't
space.
know, the when we should be trying to make mending actions and trying to see each other not as enemies within the working class.
Showcasing that common ground.
And the
Yeah.
whole, again, like the whole movie, it makes a good point of illustrating the fact that the rich want us to keep fighting amongst ourselves about race and about gender and about, oh, we can't have drag queens reading to kids in school because they're going to turn the kids gay. Whatever. Like, that shit does not matter. And the movie kind of shows that and tells you what can happen when we put aside all of those differences and realize who the real enemy is. And yeah, the movie just fucking it blew me away, and it put me in such a revolutionary mood. It makes, like, you finish this movie and then you want to go out and make a difference, and you're hungry for change. And I think that's important, because it's something that can get a lot of young people maybe interested in politics, and kind of eliminate that political apathy that is very present in young people. Like, I even
Right.
know a lot of my friends that don't even vote, or they don't know who the political candidates are for stuff. And
Right.
I'm like, come on, you gotta participate. And I think this kind of a movie can really do that.
Mm-hmm.
And
It does a
also
really good job.
and it
Sorry,
just
Matt.
I'll No problem. It just, I think it delivers. It delivers, and by the end of it, it's very satisfying. There's some good twists. There's a lot of like playing with back and forth between, you know, past and present, and it's a fun movie with a lot of tension, and I think it's criminally underseen because it's been getting pushed so far down because of the sort of controversy, I guess, around it. It's not reaching as many people as maybe it should, but I would highly recommend it. I don't even know if it's streaming anywhere or where you can watch it at this point.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe there's, you know, a little bit of fear about or maybe some pressure
taking it on
to certain streaming services where
Right.
they're being told, no, don't let people see this movie, which I would believe for sure.
I'm
Just
surprised maybe something like Mubi or something wouldn't pick it up, because even that
it
type of
might, but I
service.
mean, Mubi's also like, you know, you get to watch it for a week and then it disappears, and it's by
Yeah, I
different
guess.
countries. So maybe in like some of the non-North American countries where, say, the FBI or somebody might not have as much
Have
pull,
less of a presence, hopefully.
then perhaps. But yeah, really good movie. More people should see it.
Definitely.
It's the first one that stuck out to me, and it has stayed with me since. And you know, Red Rooms came close, but I think How to Blow Up a Pipeline just uh, it
It's
resonated with me a
relevant.
little bit more. It's very relevant. It has that sort of like the zeitgeist really captured, I think, and yeah, and I think people should be radicalized. Not enough people are radicalized because
I agree.
the
I totally
essentially
agree.
the movie explains that the system is rigged against us, so we can't expect to create change by working within the system. So we have to work from outside the system in order to change it, which is essentially what that kind of like tire slashing tactics included. And in the case of the movie, that includes blowing up a pipeline.
Right.
The movie does a really good job, I think. Just a sorry add on, Matt. At
Oh, go
like,
ahead.
it's kind of, if you are very familiar with these politics, it speaks to you as it did, Matt. And then I think it's also very good at introducing a lot of ideas to maybe an audience that may not be as familiar with these issues. It's the, as you said, like the approach that they have with all these marginalized groups. Um, all of these groups have very different backgrounds, but the way it's framed is like it's kind of like intersectionality 101, like what you would
Mhm.
learn in like a feminist course first year of school. It's like
Mhm.
all of these stories intersect, and as you said, class is kind of where it all intersects to. And it yeah, I 100% agree that the movie's not like necessarily like made to radicalize, but it does kind of give a window of why, you know, some people think more radicalized approaches are necessary. Um, because a lot of these, as you said, marginalized communities, they don't have a voice. And
Right.
sometimes you have to do things where the media is going to talk about it. And that is the only place where you can get that stage. And yeah, I agree. Great film.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, ever since you like started hyping it up, Matt, earlier in the year, it's been on my list, and regrettably, I still haven't seen it yet. Maybe fingers crossed, I'll be able to check it
Mhm.
off my list by the end of the year. When I first
It's just
started
hard
seeing
to
trailers
find.
for it myself, it was like just um, the tension is what like really grabbed me. Just
Yeah.
from like just a plain filmmaking standpoint, it just looked very intense and very like captivating in that sense.
Yeah,
So,
and it's a really good looking movie. Like they
hmm
had a really good cinematographer for it. Also, one of the characters that plays the indigenous character was the played Hawk, the son in The Revenant that gets killed by Tom Hardy.
oh, okay,
So that's a
cool,
little bit of crossover, and he's really good in the film.
nice, awesome. Well, that is Matt's favorite pick for the year. Now we're going to throw to another pre-recorded segment. So, past/future Nick, take it away. Thank you, Nick, for that lovely segment. Joining me now for the next one is Scott Milne. Welcome back, Scott.
Hi, Nick. Good to be here with present Nick, and thank you to past Nick for introducing us.
Yeah, and I look forward to talking to future Nick as well, and having this all come together in the edit with post-production Nick. I'm glad to have you back on the show. I was happy to have you on several times. You were one of the higher counted guests for appearances on the show this year. And it only makes sense because we had actually quite a bit of Star Wars stuff come out this year.
A lot of Star Wars, yeah.
And what else did we do? We did Resident Evil 4 remake as well.
Resident Evil, yeah.
Which was my highest viewed podcast episode, I think, on the podcast version. So yeah, always a pleasure to have you on. Glad you can make it on for the year in review. What was your pick that you wanted to talk about today? Your highlight of 2023?
So definitely my highlight, and this was a game that definitely, especially, kind of dominated my my kind of time and slate for like the first 6 months of the year, and it's gonna have to be Octopath Traveler 2. Oh yeah, no, like it kind of really wasn't until Zelda came out that I didn't have like kind of that competition in my mind. But for myself, it was Octopath Traveler 2. It was probably a game that went under a lot of people's radars. With kind of being that much more kind of traditional JRPG. And
do you want to give just like a brief, like quick one-liner of like what Octopath Traveler 2 is for like people who may not know at all?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, like definitely it's a 2D JRPG that is very story heavy, that's very character heavy, really driven like that. You get to play as one of 8 characters and then eventually kind of combine them all together into one mega party, and you kind of go through all their different trials and tribulations into kind of what is an unfolding kind of overarching story of kind of everything that's happening in the world and with all the characters.
Cool. And I think something to especially highlight is it's got a absolutely gorgeous art style. What's the term that they coined? It's not 2.5D. It's like
it's interesting because kind of like the studio themselves is called this, but it's HD 2D.
Right. Okay. And the studio themselves is called that? That's hilarious.
Yeah. They are kind of like that interesting division in Square right now where they're using the same Unreal Engine that kind of everybody else is across that company, but they're focusing on that classic kind of 16-bit era style of gaming with it, and just polishing some of like the best looking environments you can see. So much so that it's actually been pirated by Chinese game developers. So you can actually
like engine that they're using, or the game itself.
The game itself. You can I forget exactly the game it was, but like just when I was playing that game, I saw like just on my feed one day a Chinese clone pop up in which it's just like that's like the same environment, and like they'll have even like the same particle effects happening with like your magic spells and everything. It's just like that is a straight rip. So
I don't know the full lore of Octopath and the meaning of the the meaning of the title of the game and everything, but feels like a ripe opportunity for like rip-off games to just be like Pentapath Traveler and Septapath Traveler and Quadruple Path Traveler. Cool. I think that's something that stood out mostly to me was the HD 2D art style. It was like one of the first games to come out, if not the first game to come out with that art style.
It's back like when what was it? It was like during the first or second year of like the Switch. During the first year for sure they had announced, and I think maybe it was like by like 2018 that the game had finally come out. But what's kind of great is like with that HD 2D team, if you've been kind of following along like their journey, and a lot of like the art directors and like the game directors, a lot of the team members worked on the Bravely Default series as well. If familiar all with that line of games. But you kind of definitely see a culmination of like a lot of ideas and systems really come together in Octopath Traveler 2, which
Cool.
is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, no kidding. I still have the first one on my backlog of games, the never-ending backlog.
Yeah.
But what kind of made like this follow-up? Is it a direct sequel? Like what about the sequel really stood out to you?
It's yes and no a sequel. So
Okay.
there's like one NPC, and I don't know if this is part of the spoiler territory. I'm guessing probably this entire year in review is maybe a little bit of spoiler.
Yeah. Quick spoiler warning
Yeah.
for.
But there is one NPC that heavily hints that's just like, oh yes, we're in the same world as like the first one, but not that anybody on this continent would ever know.
Okay.
But what really kind of separated this game out from the first one was in the first one, you have the 8 characters, and you can party them all together,
Right.
but they don't ever really have too much overlapping stories. So even though they're all in the party together, they all have like their individual stories, and there's like a little tiny extra end section where they come together and fight the big bad. They really expounded on that in the second one. Like definitely you have a lot more party chat with stuff. You have inter-party quests to do.
Okay.
And the kind of end overarching story really culminates together with seeds being kind of planted all throughout everybody's individual stories that just
Cool.
really grow into this great finale at the end.
That's great to hear, because that feels
Yeah.
like something you would initially think might be like just kind of a given feature, especially
Yeah.
if there's some sort of narrative at all. I would imagine it would feel pretty like jarring or like segmented in like compared to
Yeah.
the first one would anyway. Where
In
this
which
one
that's
had
why
a better flow to it.
yeah, which is why I say like this definitely feels like the culmination of like this team's previous years of works finally coming to fruition,
Cool.
because just like we have the tech down, we can like build out our beautiful environments, we can focus a little bit more on the story and bringing these characters together to like ultimately
Build that
save the world.
foundation and be able to
Yeah.
kind of fine tune everything. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. What other like features or like new things that they introduced,
Yeah.
or again, maybe keep it as spoiler light as you
Yeah.
can, maybe.
Um,
But what are some other
one
big things
thing
you?
I definitely found is that in the second one, it kind of better educates you on how to do party composition. Just because all 8 of
Okay.
the different characters, like they have like their own unique skill sets and classes and all that, which they can dabble over and borrow skills, but like it definitely does go. It's just like, hey, these people are like your tank characters. This person's definitely going to be your healing. Another person's going to be your support, and another person is just going to like welt out damage. It definitely better educates you kind of how they kind of work. And as well, they have a couple extra fun jobs in there to kind of really add interesting twists to the combat. So that's another thing I guess I should mention is that the combat, it feels a lot more dynamic. It definitely feels like you're not just simply just trying to like weakness grind enemies all the time. It's just like, okay, like
There's a little bit more methodical like strategizing to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Until eventually you get fully powered up merchant, and then it just breaks the game. So
Yeah.
that's all I'll leave it at. So yeah.
Well, you got to make the end game fun somehow.
Oh yeah. So
cool. And in terms of, I know you're very steeped in like the JRPG like realm much more than I am anyway.
Yeah, probably.
So where would you kind of place this on a scale of like entry level for people who maybe have never played JRPGs before?
I would say like it's pretty beginner friendly. I mean, it definitely will eventually test you. But I mean, as long as you're going in just being like, I like JRPGs and would like to try one out, like definitely go for it.
Cool.
And like it definitely, as I said, like it'll kind of a little bit better educate you how it kind of plays out, and it definitely gives you freedom to explore around a lot more, and definitely try out things that you might not otherwise normally try, or be gate kept by other games. So
Okay.
that's sometimes one thing I find with other kind of RPGs in general, is like sometimes just like, cool, I love exploring, I want to explore all the places, especially the places I really shouldn't be.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I won't point too many fingers, but maybe some more of like the linear Zeldas are really bad for that. So
Okay.
definitely not Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. I mean,
Right.
those are pretty pick up and go.
Yeah.
But definitely with this one, it's just like, well, if like, you know, if you really want to challenge yourself, you can fully explore the world kind of right off the go, but just be ready for a fun challenge. So
Cool.
yeah.
And then a couple more follow-up questions. Well, in terms of, again, kind of comparing it to the first game, like, would you say, uh, it sounds like it's its own story for the most part. It's not a
Mhm.
direct tie into the first one. But
Correct.
just
Yeah.
in terms of, I guess, sheer gameplay, do you even think the first one is worth going back to, or is two kind of the complete package that you'd recommend over one?
I mean, definitely two is a lot more of a delivered package with it.
Okay.
The first one is still interesting enough to go back to. I mean, those individual character stories are still definitely really fun and exploring.
Mhm.
Especially like particular ones like Primrose and Ulbrich and Therion, I would say for sure.
Yep.
But definitely with this one, like they just really just took it up a notch and went to the next level to make sure that, hey, like kind of everybody has a good go around. I mean, I went into the game. I mean, I'd watch a lot of trailers, and I was just like, well, you know, I'm maybe not quite as initially turned on to that character story, or just the dynamism. I'm making up words.
Dynamism. I
Yeah.
don't know. I know what you
Of
mean.
another, yeah, of another character. But then once I got into it and was just finishing out everybody's chapter ones, it's just like, holy crap, that surprised me in a
Oh,
great big
cool.
way. I mean, there's definitely lots of awesome twists in it that
Nice.
definitely it you might expect some JRPG tropes in it
Okay.
because it's JRPG, but they do what they can to sometimes still throw you a good surprise with stuff.
Awesome. And how many hours did you get out of the game?
Ooh,
Is it pretty replayable? Like, did you find yourself going
ooh.
back lots, or was it kind of one big chunk of like, okay, I
Oh,
started, and then
I
80 hours later or something, you're done.
Oh yeah, like it definitely. What I sat down and I played somebody's initial chapter one. It's just like, cool. I'm gonna explore around the world as much as I can, then pick up somebody else's chapter one, do as many side quests. Like, it wasn't just simply I want to get through the story and then maybe I'll come back. It's just like, I'm gonna go for 100% right off the bat. So,
Right.
I think I was over 100 hours total for it
Wow.
for sure.
Okay.
Oh
I mean,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
easy. Like worth your money right there,
yeah.
if you're in the
Oh,
triple
absolutely.
digits. So.
I mean, because it's right here and I can show it off. I mean,
Oh, right. I forgot about
a,
that. You got one of
nice
the collector's
collectors.
editions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, which came with a interesting soundtrack. It wasn't a kind of complete game soundtrack. What it was specific battle audio tracks for like everybody.
Oh,
Which listening to it after playing the game, it's just like, oh yeah, like I can kind of really dial in on like those moments where like I was in that boss fight with that character and kind of just the struggle they
right.
were going
Cool.
through at the time. So and it came with like some fun pins and everything as well. So
Nice.
yeah,
Cool.
and
Well, that's awesome
some
to hear.
gorgeous artwork too. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, the imagery speaks for itself, I think, really. Like, and it captivates like gamers like me who have barely even touched the JRPG genre.
yeah.
So, I still very much want to try it, and maybe I will actually prioritize two over one in that case. Then, if it's more
Yeah.
of a complete package.
I would say like definitely it's just like, hey, like you've seen and heard about HD 2D stuff, but you don't know which to dive in. I would say it's just like, hey, if like you just really want to go through, and if you want like that good solid cemented story where like you get to kind of have fun with everybody, definitely Octopath Traveler 2. So
Cool. Okay, great. Well, it's settled. Well, Scott, thank you so much for joining me on the year in review for 2023. And thank you so much for being a guest on the show throughout the year. It was a blast having you on. Everybody, I will leave all of the plugs for everything for all of my featured guests down in the comments below. There'll probably be a little subheader as well that I've brought up already. So go check out all the things Scott does. All the funnies he makes on Twitter and everything, and all the out of focus stuff we do with Michael as well. So yeah, thanks again, Scott. And we're going to throw to future Nick now. Thank you very much. All right, let's move on to Shay. What was your favorite of the year?
Going off of how we kind of started the podcast, I have to agree that this was more of a year for independent films, and I should have paid more attention to independent films because one of the only ones that I saw in film festival this year is my choice. Elliot Page's Close to You by far hit home the most. We went to go see it at VIFF. There's not a lot of information about it online. I think it's only premiered at like 4 Canadian film festivals for like 2 nights. It premiered at TIFF. Going into this film, I went in with low expectations as much as I could for an Elliot Page fan. I knew it got really mixed reviews online. Unfortunately, it was, I think Rotten Tomatoes had it at like 46. Like it was literally split down the middle. It was a film that hit very close to home for me. It was a very simple film. If you're from like a small town, I'm from a small town in Ontario. Elliot Page is from a small town in similar areas of Canada, and the film just covers his character going back home for the first time after years after he moved to the city after high school. He goes home. He goes home to, on paper, as what you would call an accepting family. However, there's accepting families and then there's accepting families.
Yeah.
There are families that see you, and there's families that see you kind of more as like a political identity. And this film did a really good job at capturing microaggressions that you would get coming home. It captures how sometimes family members kind of give people with hate the benefit of the doubt a little bit too much, especially within family relations. It does a very good job at seeing how trans people get kind of silenced within their own family systems. A really big message that I took home from it is, and I think we don't talk about it enough, is how family is not everything, and chosen family is much more important sometimes. And just because we're blood related to people doesn't necessarily mean you have to put up with abuse.
Or bullshit.
Yeah, or bullshit of various degrees. It shows how important relationships are in chosen family, in the sense of like, there's a difference between somebody calling you by the proper pronouns, calling you by the proper name, and then there's people who actually see you for who you are within that identity. It was a very emotional one. Elliot Page was a producer on it. I think this is one of the very few films of his production company, Page Boy Productions. They did a very unique approach to this one, where him and Dominic Savage, the director and screenwriter, a lot of the script was kind of done on the spot. There was kind of a very loose script, and they kind
lots of
were
improv.
yeah, they were given a lot of freedom. And, you know, in some places it made the movie a little bit weaker. There was, you know, smaller characters who maybe weren't the best actors. Kind of, you could tell at times struggled with the lack of direction. And then there was, you know, people like Elliot who I very well assume has this lived experience, and it comes through in his performance and the way that he took scenes. And that was not just through like what he said necessarily, just in the way that he would hold himself in certain positions,
Totally.
feel a lot of discomfort, and it just kind of all comes down to a boiling point, and it's just, yeah, for very obvious reasons, hit very close to home for me, and I would love to see it kind of be released more broadly and for people to see it. I don't really know what the plans are for this production. You look online and you can't even find a trailer. There is nothing
Yeah.
but, sorry, Nick, there's going to be nothing for you to edit except for
Yeah.
like one frame.
All the B-roll is non-existent for this film.
Yeah.
I'm
Just
Yeah.
gonna
use
be
whatever
using one
screenshot
photo
Viff
for
had
the
for their
thumbnail.
program.
Just Shutterstock over like cityscapes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And just keep
Yeah.
the Shutterstock watermark in there too.
Yes.
Yeah, just embrace it.
Totally. Yeah, there the title "Close to You" is kind of branched off of this. I'm not going to obviously explain the entire plot, but there's this like hometown romance that I wasn't entirely sure of, and I thought that could potentially be distracting from the initial point of the film.
Mhm.
But it ended up wrapping perfectly into like what I already previously said, in kind of showing the audience the difference between a family member who is like, I love you no matter what, I'm here for you, but still kind of permitting some unacceptable behavior to this person. And then there's
Yeah.
somebody who genuinely sees him for who he is and will do anything to protect that. I don't think I've ever seen that represented in any kind of media before. And it's definitely something that I think every trans person experiences, in the whole broad spectrum of how you can get treated, good and bad. Yeah, I walked out of the theater feeling very seen, which is a rarity. And yeah, maybe I should have went to go see a lot more independent films this year.
Well, they're still around, so you can definitely go back and check out what you might have missed. So, yeah, I got to go see this with you, Shay, and I have to agree. Not so much on the representation side, because I mean, you could probably put one and one together, but just as like just a film, like, and a human story, I thought this was very powerful. I was worried because I think we had talked about all of like most of the improv stuff going in and the divisive reviews and everything. So I was a little hesitant. But it worked for me. Like, it felt so natural. It felt so lived in. A lot of that lived in experience, I think, came through and resonated on screen. And I found a lot to relate to in the film as well, like the hometown love story. Like, I felt feelings I haven't felt in a long time, and like
Yeah.
it emanates those experiences and life like experiences very well, and it captures the family dynamic, that universal family dynamic of coming home for the holidays, and like tensions between like different family members and everything, and all these little vignettes throughout the film so excellently. um, so yeah, just from a cis white male's perspective, it also has some great stuff in it, and was one of the best like human stories I found at the festival and just in the year as a whole. Um,
I
yeah,
think anybody could take something out of it for sure.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. It's a very specific experience, but at the same time, as you said, very universal as well. And
Yeah.
I liked the way that you phrased, like, it's a very lived in kind of approach. anybody, I believe we're all kind of from smallish Canadian towns in this chat. Just the places and where they decided to film. You might not have been in that town yourself growing up, but just like, crossing train tracks that you might have 100 times as a kid, or
sitting on a
where
swing set, going to a cafe.
Yeah, like where you'd go to comfort yourself as a kid and you find yourself as an adult. And those things I believe are really hard to capture through a lens sometimes, and it was successful.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Shay. It was one of the strongest entries this year for sure. All right, that's Shay's favorite. So let's move right along to the next pre-recorded segment. So
3 pre-recorded segments?
We've got more than that.
Oh my God.
There's lots.
This is going to be a 5-hour video.
You betcha. All right, take it away, Other Nick. Thank you, Other Nick, for that lovely segue. Joining me in this segment is Cole Parkinson. Welcome back to the show, Cole.
Thank you for having me for the year in review.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on. It's been a pretty good year. Your pick is going to be a TV show for this year in review. We're switching things up a little bit. The majority have been films, but I think you're the black sheep of the crowd.
And everybody probably already knows what it is.
Yeah, exactly. So what's your pick, Cole, for 2023?
Well, of course, it's got to be the first season of The Last of Us. If anybody's listened to this podcast and they've seen any of my appearances, it's pretty much a guarantee it's one of The Last of Us. So yeah, let's make it whatever, 5 or 6.
Yep. The running joke, I think, is continuing of doing something different and then doing something Last of Us related, and we'll just keep going back and forth.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll keep it pretty spoiler light, just for our kind of general thoughts and expectations on the whole thing. But yeah, how do you feel about The Last of Us? It feels so redundant asking you that question.
I know, right?
Now, but
I mean, every podcast I'm on, I do something with The Last of Us, it seems like. So, I mean, it's going to be fairly similar. I guess we'll just kind of start with expectations, because obviously The Last of Us is my favorite game of all time. So going into a TV show where you're adapting a game like that, like, it makes sense. Like, it's very cinematic, but it's also, a video game that's taken over, however long you want to play it. It's, it's a 12-hour campaign roughly. And we had 7 episodes, and for the most part, I think they nailed it. Do I like it better than the game? No. Do I like some portions better than the game? Yes. Some other portions, no. But I mean, for how they originally were going to do it in a movie, that made absolutely no sense. How they could have compacted it into 2.5 hours, maybe 3. Going with HBO, going with a full series, and going with Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin, like, the production team was great, including yourself. I'm going to throw you in there. You were awesome.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah, over 7 hours, and I guess it's a little over 7 hours. Not every episode was exactly an hour, but yeah. I mean,
it is
the
9
casting,
episodes.
9. Yeah, why do I keep saying 7? 9. Yeah, I don't know why. Who knows what's going on over here? Yeah, over 9 episodes. I think they really crushed it. I guess, yeah, we'll see kind of what they do moving forward. And then obviously we're not going to talk too much about that, but I think they've set themselves up beautifully to keep going too. So yeah, great series, great first kind of, people were talking about. Obviously I'm living in Southern Alberta, so it was huge around here since they filmed around here, and a lot of locations where it's like, holy shit, that's, the Lethbridge Bridge was in it. Like, I drive by that every day. Yeah. So very cool.
Never thought that you would have seen that on the not big screen, but in a like narrative driven, like, big budget project, right? Yeah. It's the bar now. I think the bar has been set for video game adaptations, and like, obviously like not every adaptation can be one-to-one. Like you're going to have properties that will be better suited for like movies, like the Mario
Yep.
movie, I think, obviously, and even like the Sonic films and stuff.
Yeah.
Or you do like the limited series format with things like Arcane and Cyberpunk Edge Runners. But just in terms of quality, I think you can still kind of use Last of Us as like an umbrella bar setter,
Yeah.
I would say, just in
Especially
terms of the
since,
amount of faith, right?
yeah, and just going back through, the last 20 years of adaptations of video games, like not great. Like there's maybe one or two that are
No.
good, and some are so bad that they're good, but none of them have kind of reached this level that The Last of Us has done. And now,
Yeah.
we got God of War coming, we got Fallout coming. We'll see kind of
Ghost of
where
Tsushima.
they go. Yeah, Ghost of Tsushima. I mean, the bar has been set. I think you're entirely correct there.
Yeah, it just like it fires on all cylinders. Like the casting is amazing. They give each moment in the game. I think what you mentioned earlier of like still preferring the game, it just is like a companion piece now to the Last of Us universe. It's just different. It's not that one
Yeah.
is necessarily better than the other. And I think some bias will probably innately come with that, right? Of like growing up with the games and everything.
Yeah.
So, but it is
Yeah, I mean,
it is
somebody who's only seen the TV show and then they play the game, they might prefer the show at that point, right? It's just
totally.
Sometimes the first thing you do is the first thing you connect with, and it doesn't really matter what comes next. So yeah, I mean, but for the most part, like
that being said, it like you could have seen the show and played the game and still got more out of it from the game too, right? Or got something different out of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easily the best. It's kind of a low bar anyway for like as far as TV goes for what I've seen this year. Because outside of The Last of Us, I think the majority of the like limited series or shows that I've seen this year are all like Disney Plus related. So
yeah,
yeah, it's just it's great. There's it's very deserving of the best adaptation award that it won the Game Awards this year.
yeah.
And I have nothing but faith in them going forward. It's more just a question of curiosity of how they're going to handle part 2 and these characters and this story going forward. But nothing but excitement. So yeah. Any other like specific things that are as spoiler light that you
I guess we got to talk about obviously Joel and Ellie coming from the game. Like those are probably my two favorite characters of all time. So seeing different portrayals was a little odd at the very beginning. I was like, I like it, but it's kind of different. But
feels like Uncanny Valley a little bit, right?
Right? Yeah, it was like it looks like Joel. It kind of sounds like Joel, but it's not necessarily the Joel that I know and love. But throughout the season, like Pedro Pascal was great. Like, the entire cast really. I don't think there was a single person that I was like, "Wow, you're really not the character that I remember." And even if it was significantly changed, I think they brought something new that drew me in. And obviously, I was gonna be watching regardless, just because I love The Last of Us. But yeah, we'll see kind of what happens next because casting is huge and they nailed it in the first season, but they got some big things to do here in the second.
Big shoes to fill.
And the third. Yeah. So, but again, complete faith in Neil and Craig with whatever they're going to do. And yeah, I mean, I guess we'll also just maybe just a little bit talk about Bill's episode. That was so good. Talk about a deviation from the game. Perfect episode. I know a lot of people, were like, oh, it doesn't really pertain to Joel and Ellie, but man, what a way to, move away from the game. It's obviously hinted a lot in the game, but just to see that play out was so good.
Yeah, that is like the crux of just the entire show, taking risks and doing things differently and it paying off almost always. Like, just that episode is that like mantra distilled to an essence, basically. I think that was like one of, if not the only episode that they like pushed for like Emmy nominations and
Yeah.
stuff, which is totally, it makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, Joel and Ellie are the whole face of The Last of Us, but like, I mean, that episode is just so phenomenal. So
Yeah. And it really was a risk. I mean, to just like, what was that, episode 3? Like, really only had 2 episodes with Joel and Ellie. They're kind of the backbone of the show, and then you just completely leave their story until like the very last 5 minutes. Like, it was a big risk, but it really paid off.
Yeah. And I think this kind of just falls in line with the whole discussion of like having faith in the creators, especially if it's the original creators who are involved. Like, just having faith in them, know where to take these characters and this story, and know that it can't necessarily be a one-to-one, especially when you're going from a narrative-driven video game to just more traditional storytelling in TV and film. Because, like, to bring up kind of our discussion around Spider-Man 2, the new Insomniac game, like, there are limits to what you can do with a story, or like weaknesses that are inflicted on a story when it is presented in a game format, right? Like, because you have stuff that you want the player to do, you want a certain level of player agency and player freedom. Those things just don't exist in traditional storytelling. So like, they're going to be two different things, right? And I think that, well,
especially with like
another
stuff with like the combat, there's a lot of times where it's like, oh, here's a combat scene, but in the show they can't obviously just show Joel and Ellie mowing through guys for 25 minutes. Like, and I think for the most part they nailed it. Obviously the last episode with Joel, like, that was awesome to see. Like, they had to show that, but like Pittsburgh is completely different.
Plus budgets and stuff City, come up too as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can't carry out every single iconic action sequence from the game, because that would be like a multi-million-dollar show, or even more so than it already is. So,
exactly. And you don't even really need it. Like, if you want that, go play the game. Like, that's what it's there for. Like, that's the great thing about this adaptation is like, it's very similar, but there's also differences. So like, you get lots out of both.
Yeah. And you can't necessarily always have your cake and eat it too, because like, sometimes things come at a cost. So like, do you want all of these iconic, memorable action sequences, or do you want them to get the characters right and the story?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, sometimes you can't have both. So,
and especially for this, I think the characters are kind of the number one thing. Like, Joel and Ellie are really The Last of Us. Like, if they didn't have absolutely any like encounters with hunters or any of the infected, and was only about Joel and Ellie, like, it would still work. It wouldn't be nearly as strong, obviously, but the two characters, and nailing them with the casting and with the writing is the main thing with The Last of Us. And they did it. Like, I wasn't expecting to love it nearly as much as I did, but I did. So that's saying something.
Yeah, it's an easy, the best, or the top recommendation for me in terms of TV this year. I can't wait to rewatch it before season 2 comes out.
Yep.
And I, like, as I'm sure you are, just very excited for how things are going to progress going forward.
Yeah, and with filming coming up, I mean, we're going to get some big news, and there's already some rumors out there, so I'm all in.
Exactly. Yep. Very excited. Well, thank you very much, Cole, for coming on to be featured on the 2023 In Review. I will have all of my guests' social information and plugs and everything down in the comments below. And yeah, I look forward to doing more reviews and stuff with you in the new year.
You bet.
Otherwise, now we're going to throw back to main segment, Nick. So take it away. Okay, and we're back. So going from these very radically moving, politically charged stories and these very lived in natural human stories, we're going to go into the multiverse now. Michael, what was your pick for this year?
I went and I loved Across the Spider-Verse, which I would say there's some political things in there, as much as they could get away with in terms of like undertones and storytelling. Like, if you look at the color palette, especially for Gwen, there's lots of trans inclusivity there, and they kind of toy with the idea, oh, is she an ally? Is she trans? And there's lots of undertones in terms of like who trusts and supports Miles in his time of danger, and who's kind of holding him back, and kind of like, no, we should look at all the angles. And there's some more political ideas there.
For sure.
And it's great because there's those undertones, and then there's also like a million, trillion, billion other undertones and like levels of writing
and everything.
Undertones, overtones, levels of writing, and like it's great because all of it follows this very simple idea, which is, I think all superhero movies should follow this very simple idea: is what is the core structure of the movie? It's a very simple answer: a boy wants to save his dad. That's it. That's the beginning, the middle, and the end of the movie. I want my dad to live, and I think that that's one of the things I love. I understand that throwing praise on the writing of it is a little bit problematic at points, because Phil Lord and Christopher Miller got some flack for kind of being a little bit like, we want to rewrite it and then animators have to reanimate a scene. We want to rewrite it, animators have to reanimate a scene, and that's kind of where a lot of the pressure came in. So I don't want to lift them above that, but I think that in terms of a collaborative effort, it was like a shining example of what a film community can be, because I've seen it a lot for a lot of movies. Like you watch a Martin Scorsese movie, guess who gets all the praise? Not the camera op, not the DOP, not the sound recordist. Like, for example, just to jump for an example real quick, I was like watching The Killer last night. And there's a bit where he pauses music on his home's audio system, and it doesn't cut. There's like a pop on the speaker. I'm like, the sound, that's brilliant, because the sound guy had to sit through, wait, no, hold on. You have to think of that. And that's the kind of praise that I love for Across the Spider-Verse, is because it wasn't people just going to, oh, Sony, you're so awesome. Oh, Chris, you're so awesome. Or the actors, they're like, bringing up the animators. And I see the animators on social media like, hey, here's the scene I animated. Like, getting praise. And then like you go through the music of it. And the music is such an incredible part of it, because it's like, it's character layered, which is the best kind of music. Because someone pointed out that when you start the movie and you have Gwen giving her recap speech, you listen to the drums. It's chaotic and slightly off rhythm with the rest of her band. Then in the middle and during her fight with the Vulture, it's kind of more in line, but it's way subtler, because she's almost in it, like way a bit more of a background character as the story develops. And then at the end, her drumming segment comes back in line, and it's directly built because she's now part of a team. And that's an incredible music motif. And yeah, it's just like, it's overall just like an incredible film that does two things that I've wanted movies to do for a very long time, which is show that animation can be supported and show that superhero films can be supported. Because I don't necessarily feel that superhero movies are getting stale, because comics have been around since like War Bonds sort of thing. There's structure and complexity and incredible depth and love of storytelling within there. What people are tired of doing is going to the cookie cutter factory. It's like, we have boxed and packaged this movie, pushed it out, hundreds of $1 million, please, and just doing that over and over. And that's what I think
it's like beyond just superhero movies too. That's like still the predominant force in the blockbuster space, but just blockbusters in general now become very cookie cutter, very safe. Like, even as much as me and Shay, I don't know if Michael, you saw Indy 5, but as much as we loved Indy 5, it's still very like safe and cookie cutter at times. So, but yeah.
No, it's just like, it's purely pushing that boundary of going somewhere a little bit different, because it's the new animation style they have for the Spider-Verse movies is so gorgeous to look at, and you see all the detail in it, because it's drawings over top of 3D models. And to use the bad word, I understand there's some AI in there, but it is, majority of the time, it is people going through carefully animating segments. and it's a movie that screams just passion. I can generally get into any film if it's just passionate, and you can just see every and any detail of passion and love and comedy that went into just every layer of the film. And I I think it's just an incredibly great experience. There's a reason why there was just like fury when the movie ended. Because when I
Yeah.
was, because
Oh, dude.
in my theater, when the ending continued in like part 3, the audience went, "No!"
Yep.
Like the big
My
bro.
jaw dropped. I was like, "No, please don't end, God!"
But like
And
it's great because like you sit there like, wait, that was 2.5 hours? No, but
Yeah.
we're like, we just got
we're
started.
just getting started. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's a very passionate blockbuster. It's probably the most passionate blockbuster I've seen this year. Just like, I don't know how they surpassed themselves with Into the Spider-Verse, because the animation, the score, the like down to the voice acting and the casting, like everything feels so coherent and like so tightly put together, and every character has their own like tangible like feel and look in the film. They go absolutely bonkers with the multiverse concept once again, and they're still able to deliver like an amazing human story of that central core plot and theme of Miles wanting to save the ones he loves. And yeah, just blew me away.
I think what I also enjoyed, it was refreshing because usually with these multiverse movies, there's like the hero wants something in the multiverse and he wants to like grab it and like that will save the day, or like there's something out there that has to be stopped or something. But it kind of flips that on its head, where it's like Miles thinks it's cool, he wants to be involved, but he's like didn't open the multiverse on purpose. He didn't grab it, and he's not looking to pick a fight with like his evil darker half, which does show up at the end of things. But like for the most of the part, the antagonist is Spider-Man 2099.
Yeah.
But really, it's actually Spider-Ham. He's pulling the strings. I really hope they pull John Mulaney in just to go, we all make sacrifices, Miles. Like, they didn't have him record for the third movie. Just like, hey, John, that's it. But no, it's great because it becomes a fight that isn't just like good versus evil. It becomes a fight of, because I left the movie theater like, there's no way any Spider-Man worth his like gumption would be like, there's no way to save lives. But then I think about it, I'm like, well, this guy did something selfish, and then it fucked over other people, and now he's like, I have to stop this from because it's my bad. And so like, like, okay, it's a complexity, because you're like, he's like directing his anger for his mistake toward Miles, and trying to put all the blame on him for showing him that there is a multiverse out there. Like, it's your fault. Right. It's your fault this happened. And then it becomes a bit of a philosophical argument, which is like, is it worth the risk of Miles's dad, this one life, to have the whole universe, trillions upon trillions of lives throughout the whole universe, snuffed out so Miles can keep his dad?
Well, and it speaks to just like the journey of self-identity too, right? And it like flips the whole script of what it means to be Spider-Man on its head. And Miles is very much going against the ideals that kind of we have built him up to be even. So it's just a very fascinating like character turn, that he literally says he's going to do his own thing. So it's just a very cool journey of like self-discovery in Miles's story, that doesn't get lost in the weeds of everything else that goes on. And there's other like subplots as well. Like Gwen has her own like arc with her dad. That's in there as well.
And then you have the Spot, which is like, it's the perfect buildup of a villain, because he starts off as like below street level. The man can't even like rob a convenience store with the power of portals. And like just like a baseball bat is enough to tell him, whoa, I'm sorry. But like just like starting off with that and having him, and then seeing him in like his second stage where he's a bit more confident and he's a little bit more juiced up with power. You're like, okay, this guy means some business. And then you get like Dark Spot or whatever you want to call him.
H.P. Lovecraft Spot, where he's like,
it's like
an eldritch horror.
Just like see you soon, Miles. Like, oh, that's not good.
No,
that's a bad thing that just happened.
In trouble.
But like this incredibly well built thing, all from like this one-off joke about the bagel. But
one of the best retcons ever.
I think what I'm always going to take away from the movie is two things. Just like the incredible way this nudged animation forward, because I think you're going to see a lot more studios be like, oh, animation, you say? That makes money.
Because we're already seeing with stuff like TMNT this year as well, right?
So.
Yeah, no, that's it's just because the timeline's so close. I don't know if I guess like the probably more came from Into the Spider-Verse being a solid thing, because just like development time. But yeah, no, I'm excited for more stuff like that, and just the writing structure is something to be studied, like layers upon layers upon layers, all built upon the foundation of the simple character goal, which will always be like my favorite thing. It was always like a good sign of a movie if a character's goal is, well, I have to get X to do Y while supporting my daughter through her time of need, and worst of all, prom's tomorrow. Like that's just
these are good, Michael. I'm gonna have to clip this out.
So you some Warner Brothers executive now. No, but like I'll always take in favor of that. I'll always take simple character goal. I need to accomplish this to reach my goal and build upon that. And that I think that's what Spider-Verse is going to be seen as, like the simple writing lesson. Again, only the credit due to Christopher. I'm swapping their names around. Christopher Lord. Yes. No, Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. Only the due credit to them when they're not torturing animation teams.
And I hope that's something I hope the writing doesn't get left behind, because we are seeing the effects of Into the Spider-Verse's animation style with things like Ninja Turtles and like Mitchell's versus the Machines. I'm curious to know if even like Wish, like Disney's latest animation film, took any inspiration. Say what you will about that film, but I hope
it looks
the
like
animation style isn't
Disney
the only thing that studios take the lesson from Into the Spider-Verse. I hope the writing is something that
I think from what I've seen about Wish, I haven't like nestled down into the blanket with some hot cocoa, but I have seen like it seems to be the 3D model with some drawing overtones.
Yeah,
but very, very safe level. Very
definitely not. Yeah, it's like the Disney version. It's definitely nowhere near emulating even like the way that TMNT did. But that's a whole other bag of worms. Spider-Verse, an amazing sequel. If they're able to do what they did with the first two movies in Beyond the Spider-Verse, then it will probably be the best Spider-Man trilogy out there. It's kind of weird to say that, the fact that there's multiple, but
fair.
Yeah, it's it is my favorite of the year as well. But for the sake of variety, I will be picking something else. Let's keep moving things along. We've got another pre-recorded segment up next. So, Other Nick, take it away. Thank you, Other Nick, for that lovely segue. Joining me for this segment of the Year in Review is Piero Cyprian. Welcome back to the show, Piero.
Thank you. It's nice to be here again. It's been a while, I guess.
Nice.
Probably since the summertime.
Well, not necessarily, because I did have you on for that Viffin review, right?
Yes, my bad.
Yeah, that was definitely the most recent thing I've had you on, and I'm glad to have been able to have you on for more entries, I guess, in the year.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
definitely tried at the beginning of, or not beginning, but last year when I got this whole thing started,
Yeah.
definitely was able to get you on more so this year, which is great. Very thankful that you made the time to come onto the show and talk movies and whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, without further ado, let's get into your top pick of 2023, which is, care to take it away?
It is Beau is Afraid by Ari Aster. It was a pretty wild, unbelievable movie. It's totally
It is one of the most unique films I've seen this year, and I'm guessing you have as well. We got to see it together, so that was also a fun little surprise as well. We didn't even plan on seeing it together, and we did.
oh, like I
One
just
of
walked in and I saw
Yeah.
you and Jake just sitting in the theater, and I was like, no way. How
What
is
are
this?
the chances? Yeah,
Yeah, I bought the ticket an hour before, and it was the only theater on opening night that still had quite a few seats. So it was
yeah,
just
yeah.
perfect.
That was one of the more in demand movies in the the beginning of the year as well, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, back in
yeah,
April.
what are the chances? So weird. One of the most memorable theater experiences I've had this year for sure.
Totally, for sure, and definitely
Um,
something to talk about in like 20 years
yeah,
from now.
totally.
Yeah,
But let's talk about the movie itself. This will be spoiler free, as most of the movie discussions have been. We'll keep it like pretty brief, but just kind of go over um, your general thoughts on the film,
for sure.
and how it sits with you now after all these months of sitting with it, and
Yeah,
maybe like some expectations or whatever.
for
Go
sure.
where your heart desires with this discussion, Piero.
Okay, sounds good. Well, yeah, like I just remember once the movie finished, um, like the three of us were just sitting in silence for like the longest time, and we were just trying to process what happened
Yeah.
because it was just 3 hours of just like the most nightmarish like
Mhm.
scenarios that were happening. It was pretty unbelievable.
Yeah.
Uh,
Aster is amazing. He's a masterclass in dread and tension, and that is on full display here. It's just 3 hours of that basically.
yeah,
Um, but it's also like one of the most whimsical. It's definitely the most whimsical film he's done.
sure.
Um,
The
and
cinematography
it's
is
an
so fun.
epic.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Yeah.
Um,
It I think where I kind of ended up, it held a top spot on my 2023 list for quite a while. But gradually made its way lower down just because runtime, I think for me, is a big uh, factor in deciding some of my favorite films, just because it's so much easier to kind of put on a 90-minute movie than it is a 3 hour or 4 hour movie, right?
yeah,
So
definitely.
it definitely uh, increases the like rewatchability and just the favoritism over it a little bit. So, but that's me
Mhm.
personally. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
there's so much.
yeah, like 3 hour movies, you got to really dedicate the right night for it, and there's so many out there that like sometimes it's hard to rewatch those. Yeah, so
Yeah,
definitely understand, but I don't know with this movie, I like even though it's like it's a true feel bad movie, like it's not
yeah,
one that necessarily people would want to watch again.
yeah.
But I think that's what's so amazing because it just puts this effect on you, and like there's so many moments that are unforgettable. Like I even
Hmm.
the first half an hour, I won't give anything away, but the first half an hour is just like the most insane um yeah, just
It's like
sequence of
sequence of events. Yeah,
events pretty much. Yeah. It was yeah. I you got people got to see it for themselves. Like it's a movie that's probably best to go into not knowing anything.
for
Just
sure.
maybe watch Hereditary and Midsummer beforehand just to get an idea
Hmm.
of what Ari Aster
His
is.
style, yeah, his
Yeah,
style is definitely still prevalent, which is good.
yeah,
It's just that it's still such a departure in a lot of ways from those two films. Hereditary is like one of my all-time favorite movies.
Mhm.
Midsummer a little bit less so, but I think it's very tonally consistent, very feel bad movie, like you said, which also lends itself to decreasing the like rewatchability. I think more of the rewatchability comes from just the sheer roller coaster of emotions. It is generally a feel bad movie, but like you're just bewildered so many times, you're so confused, you're shocked at what you're seeing is happening on screen. um,
Yeah.
and then like especially also in like the second act area of the film, you just get like swept away on this entirely different journey, right?
It's a little funny as
And
well.
yeah, there are quite a few funny moments for sure,
Yeah,
which does help in moments of levity,
for sure.
because it can be a very heavy film at times and a very intense film.
Definitely.
But yeah, I think most of the rewatchability comes in with just trying to gain a better foothold on that roller coaster ride of emotions, and then just the sheer amount of stuff that happens on screen. This is
Mhm.
like Ari Aster dialed up to 11 in terms of like filmmaking. Like there is so much, especially in that first act you mentioned, Piero, where like the camera panning and whips and stuff on the street, and just like all of the different things going on with extras and the production design of how everything is structured and laid out and all the blocking of everything. It
Mhm.
just it's his most ambitious movie, and in that like regard I think he definitely um flourished, I would say.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it is very hard to talk about without going into spoilers. So maybe we'll do like a quick, maybe if you have a couple like bullet points, we'll do like a little mini spoiler section of like a couple things that really stick with you now to this day about that film, spoiler wise.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Well, I the main character is played by Joaquin Phoenix, and he's just this uh, kind of like no name, kind of lifeless person. He doesn't really have much with his life anymore. He's just looking for his mother,
Mm-hmm.
and that is essentially the movie, is just him trying to find his mother, and he goes through a lot of different stuff, um, going from like family to family. Uh, but yeah, like I for me the most memorable is that first 30 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
because like the spider on the ceiling, like when they were hinting the whole spider thing, that was just
Oh yeah, the bathtub
that
scene.
that got me like
God.
sweating. Like I
Yeah,
was so stressed out.
yeah, yeah, as he
But
should be.
but yeah, like um
And it's
I
just so absurd, right? Like just like a half naked man, or like was it a half naked man on the roof, or was Beau half naked?
no
One of
it,
them's half
he
naked,
was
I
in the
think.
he was in the bathtub.
Yeah,
I
he
think we were
was taking
both.
that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he was. He was. No. The guy at the top, he was just the he was all wearing clothes. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But
So ridiculous.
yeah, I I do think I should give it another watch now that I have appreciated it, and it's been almost a year since we've seen it.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I went to Peru over the summer, and they in South America they're infamous for all their knockoff pirated DVDs,
Oh yeah.
and
Oh
like they
man.
have interesting covers. But I got Beau is Afraid, but it doesn't work on my TV. It's just a bad disc. So I was a
That's
little,
hilarious. Is it a
but
pretty good cover though? At least the box art must be like pretty worth it.
uh, it's the regular cover. It's the
Oh,
regular.
okay. Okay.
But
Dang.
it was a Blu-ray. It was they
Oh,
hinted
really?
at
Okay.
Blu-ray, but I got some
Keeping up
other
with the
ones here,
times. That's good.
so it's okay.
Nice.
Yeah, but no, like once A24 decides to release that on 4K, I'm definitely gonna go for that instantly. And he did say, like, leading up to it, that there's a 4-hour cut out there that he
Oh
originally
yeah. I
had.
forgot about
So
that.
I mean, like with Midsummer, his extended cut kind of changed the whole storyline a little bit with
Oh, really?
the
See, I
main
don't know
character.
if I've actually seen the extended cut. I don't remember.
It's like half an hour extra, and there's just
Okay.
moments that are a little bit longer, but it definitely changes your perspective on certain characters. So could be the same with Beau's Afraid if he decides to do that. And
Interesting.
I'd
Yeah,
love
that would be very interesting because it's a very singular perspective, that whole movie, right? You're literally just following Beau the whole time. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, for
interesting.
sure. But yeah, and I'm looking forward to whatever he does next.
Yeah, me too. He's still at the top of my list for one of the most interesting filmmakers working today.
For sure.
I will absolutely go see whatever he makes next, and I definitely do want to rewatch it now. Obviously, like in the time immediately following that film, it was like, no, I don't have any desire to rewatch that anytime soon. But
No,
like obviously, as time goes on, I definitely my interest increases again, and I'm like, oh yeah, I want to rewatch that again, see what I picked up or see what I missed the first time around, and pick up on it the second time, and definitely want to add it to my physical media collection as a part of like film history and just Ari Aster's catalog of movies, right? Just to see
for
where
sure.
he's gone as a filmmaker, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah, it again, one of the most unique films of the year. So
And
understandable why it would be your pick.
yeah, I mean, I like wild zany movies, and I like when something is just so totally unexpected. Just
Yeah,
and there was just a lot of that the entire way through.
yeah,
So
absolutely. Cool.
um, yeah,
Well, thank you so much, Piero, for joining me on the 2023 year in review. Once again, I'm very thankful that you were able to make it on as many times as you did this year. And I look forward to having you on, hopefully more so in the next year.
absolutely.
So we're going to throw it back to other Nick again, to the main portion of the show. So take it away. Thank you very much, other Nick. And now for my pick of the year that isn't Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This was a pretty recent film, came out towards the end of this year. So some recency bias may be included, but regardless, The Holdovers, directed by, where is he?
Alexander Payne.
Alexander Payne. Thank you. Uh, was my pick of the year that I wanted to talk about. It has cemented its place as a yearly Christmas/holiday tradition. Now, it is so like just quaint and warm and cozy, and delivers such a powerful like character story between these two stubborn characters that are at odds with each other throughout the whole film. Um, it follows mainly two men at this private all boys school over the holiday break. There are a few students who aren't going home for the holidays who are known as the Holdovers. And Paul Giamatti's character is in charge of looking after them. And he's also accompanied by Davine Joy Randolph's character, who is the cafeteria lead cook. And the three of them, it follows the three of them basically just hanging out and like getting mainly Dominic Sessa's character Angus getting into trouble and defying Paul Giamatti's rule. It's a hilariously like serious film because it has so many moments of levity and comedy, uh, but there's also, especially in the back half of the film, there is some very in-depth character studies of these people, um, and they just feel like such fully fleshed out, like well-rounded characters. And I think it's set in the 70s as well, but it looks like it was like it came straight out of the 70s. It has that like warm texture to it. I get like evocations of like the Christmas season and like going home for the holidays and like leaving school for a holiday break as well. That is emanated very well. And yeah, just like amazing performances. I mean, Paul Giamatti needs no like praise, any further praise. It speaks for
The
itself.
Rhino himself.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of Spider-Man.
The titular big fat liar.
Davine Joy Randolph is amazing as well. She definitely gets like the least screen time of the three, but she is a powerhouse through and through, and she commands every scene that she's in. And her character story, Mary, is very heartbreaking, but very touching. And Dominic Sessa, this is his first film ever. Apparently, I think if I remember correctly, some trivia behind the film, the private school that they filmed it at, Alexander Payne like actually cast or like took auditions from the drama like class of that school, and Dominic
That's
Sessa
awesome.
like went to that class. So that's how they found him, and he's amazing. Like one of the best debut feature film performances I've ever seen. And yeah, like it's just such a great holiday watch. It's got the comedy, it's got the drama behind it, and I just found so much to relate to with the themes of found family, and like it also like just sent me back to the high school days of like finding the or like getting to know your teachers beyond being teachers, and like learning more about them as human beings, and how that relationship develops between the two of you, and like kind of the respect you gain for one another and the admiration you gain for one another. It's a very rare thing to find, I think, in that type of environment, because a lot of like, I mean, high schoolers are little shitheads most of the time, and it's on display in this film as well. um, so I can't imagine a ton of kids are fortunate enough to establish that connection for whatever reason, but it is a connection that is very special, and it is displayed here phenomenally. um, yeah, I just don't, I I cannot recommend this one enough, and especially considering the fact that the holiday season is just around the corner. This video will be going up like right at the tail end of the year. It the movie kind of takes place between Christmas and New Year's, so it's also a perfect New Year's watch as well. So yeah, beautiful looking film, amazing cast. I hope this gets. I don't know if the cutoff for award season is too late, but I really hope it's able to qualify.
Oh, it's definitely going to qualify.
Perfect. Yeah.
It counts movies that get released from like January to February or something.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
I remember a while back when Zero Dark 30 was released and nominated, it was up for awards before it had even had a theatrical run.
Oh, seriously?
Something like people, literally nobody had seen the movie, or it had come out like the week before or something.
Oh my God.
It was a whole big thing.
Well, that's good. So yeah, I'll definitely be contending for that one, fighting for that one. Yeah.
Going up to the Oscars board. I'll fight you. I'll fight you for this.
Give Paul a nomination.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my recommendation. The Holdovers. Everyone needs to go watch it this holiday season.
I'm gonna see it this week. My family's coming to visit, so that'll be one of our nightly events going down to International Village, because it's thankfully still playing in theaters.
Excellent. Great to hear. And yeah, I don't think we have any more pre-recorded segments left. If we do, then I can throw to Nick now. If not, then that's kind of where we'll wrap it up for this 2023 in review. Thank you to my three guests for joining me. All things considered, I think it went pretty well overall, if this was indeed the first time I've had three people on. I will include, we'll kind of just leave all the plugs and stuff. I'll have all of the information in the description down below if you want to visit anybody's like Letterboxd page or social page or anything, all the works that they have going on. Thank you as well to all of the guests that were featured in the pre-recorded segments. I appreciate all of you immensely for like agreeing to be on this show this year. You guys make it what it is, and I love talking movies and games and TV with my friends, and that's what the show is at the end of the day. So
That's true.
I appreciate every single one of you. I hope everybody has a great holiday break, holiday season, whatever that may mean to you. And yeah, you can find me wherever you're listening to or watching this episode of the NoScore Review Show. You can go check out the various episodes that these three have been featured on. Matt was on for the VIF 2023 in review as well. You can find him there. Shay was on. Was Shay? Yours was the Saw X one most recently, right?
Yes.
Saw Patrol episode.
Saw Patrol. And Michael, you were on for Spider-Man 2 as well. Marvel Spider-Man 2, the video game for PS5.
Yeah. I was like, that came out in 2003. You didn't do a show back then.
Hobie?
This show has been on for decades. Yeah, so go check those various videos out. Otherwise, you can find me on Letterboxd as well and all the socials at NoScore or at NoScore Reviews. Thanks again so much for watching and listening. Have a happy new year, happy holiday season, and we'll see you in 2024. Bye-bye.